Chapter 4. I picked up my phone and then put it down. I'd call my mother after I checked into the hotel. I handed over the SUV keys to the valet and ignored his nose curl. I'd still tip the man, but so what if I didn't drive a Maserati like the customer behind me? I filed the paperwork and tucked my phone in my purse as the late afternoon sky suffocated the air. My mother had told me to call right after the wake, but if I dialed, Ellie would chirp louder than the wild parrots in the palm trees above my head. Ellie Collins could wait. The tropical paradise of this deluxe hotel offered a stark contrast to the funeral home. The clear blue sky with spots of white clouds and happy birds and palm trees helped steal the tension from my body. I strolled past the fountain and into a marble-floored lobby. The Biltmore was iconic old Miami, built in the 1920s with lofted ceilings, an inner courtyard famous for its outside seating, unlimited Bellinis for Sunday brunch, and one of the best spas in the country. My heels sank into the plush red carpet as I walked toward the mahogany desk to check in. I gazed through the French doors to the outside tropical paradise, which enticed me with the sound of bubbling water. For one night, I was living it up, and I intended to take a long swim in the morning in that perfectly blue pool. A dip in the waters would help me forget all about John Morgan and that wake. Tonight, I dreamed that John Morgan's lips touched mine. Of course they hadn't, but my lips tingled with a long ago high school memory. My mother would tell me to never see or think about John Morgan. Ellie had serious issues with the House of Morgan that extended to all of their children. Mom hadn't even been sad when Vicky died. Instead, she'd been stoic and not said a word as I cried that my childhood friend was dead. I sighed. Perhaps I needed to think of happier moments. Above my head, the pillars to the high painted ceilings overwhelmed my sense of awe. This place smelled like money, which was strange for me since I needed to budget. With a nose twitch, I shook my head and realized that thought came from Jennifer's little jab about my black dress. Normal people budgeted and once in a while splurged. The superstarlet didn't get to judge my life. I reached the desk and waited for the man behind it to finish his phone conversation and then speak to me. Finally, his gaze met mine as he ended his call, and I told him, "I'm checking in. Alice Collins." "Ms. Collins." Another man behind the counter stepped forward as the original clerk stepped back. He wore a red uniform, but his was more formal. The clerk stepped aside, and the hotel manager with a pin on his name badge waved his hand to his right. "We're happy you chose our hotel for your overnight stay. There is a gentleman here to see you." Impossible. My dad was in Homestead packing up his house, and my brother was still in the Marines. As that was the extent of the men in my life, I shook my head. "A gentleman? Who is he?" "I'm not at liberty to answer, ma'am." "Did you ask what he wanted?" He averted his gaze. "It wasn't my place." I swallowed. With a thump, I released the handle of my black rolling suitcase and leaned on the counter. "And you didn't get his name to share with me?" "I cannot say." It had been a tiring day. I kept my tone even and said, "So he could be some crazy person." "I assure you he's not." Clearly, I wouldn't get anywhere with this manager. I crossed my arms and stepped backwards. "I don't want to go meet strange men. I'd like to just check in, please." The man's expression fell, but I stood tall. The manager typed into the computer and said, "Your room won't be available for another hour. I'm very sorry, miss." How convenient. I wasn't fooled. "How much did this man pay you to get me to talk to him?" The clerk averted his face and stared at his computer as his manager said, "I don't know what you mean." Lies didn't invoke trust. I pressed my lips together. "Of course you don't. It was only perfect timing." He stayed silent. There was no other choice. I was in no danger except being annoyed with whoever delayed me. "If I go, will my room be ready sooner?" "I will see to it that your room is ready upon your return." I narrowed my stare until he flushed. "Sure. Okay. If anything happens to me, I'll sue and own this place." The man smiled like I'd just saved his life or the life of someone he loved. "Of course, miss, you will most assuredly be fine." I snapped my fingers at my sides. Of course. I let out a breath I hadn't known I held and followed him outside to the Cascade Patio near the pool. Metallic chairs were filled with people lounging by the blue waters, but I didn't recognize anyone. If it was a stranger, I'd run the other direction. Without warning, my escort stopped near the bar. I scanned the area for someone I knew. Then my heart contracted as I stared into the blue eyes of John Morgan. My spirit lifted. He had asked for me. I had no idea why. Our last conversation made made it seem like he'd never speak to me again. He'd been rude an hour ago, but it was hard to remember what happened as he gave me that gorgeous smile. John stood up as I walked toward him, and my heart skipped a beat. His broad shoulders and open smile invited me to throw myself into his arms. He wore the pants he'd had on for the wake and a white shirt that was now unbuttoned a few notches. The shirt melded to every hard muscle of his body. Along his travels to the hotel, he'd lost the jacket and tie, amplifying pure masculinity. I opened my mouth and tried to speak, but no words formed. Refusing to act like an idiot, I inhaled and forced myself to sound normal. "I didn't expect to see you." He kept his hands to his sides and offered a small smile without the dimples. "I am sorry, Alice. I was rude, and I wanted to tell you that in person." With a lift of my chin, I focused on my questions, and not on how my mind went blank near him. "How did you know I was here?" "After you left, I talked with Mr. Solis, and he told me." He was so tight in the shoulders. My gaze honed in on the slight bump from a break of his nose during a football game. "Mr. Solis? You mean Rafe? We went to school with him." I thought he looked familiar, but didn't remember from where. Figured. I stood on my tiptoes to get him to look me in the eye. It was time he stopped forgetting about the past. "What do you remember?" "That I was angry at my brother and myself for being at the wake. I was rude to you, and I came to apologize." With words like that, I'd fall to his feet and worship. He didn't have to say them. My body melted a little that he did, though, and I smiled. "Your dad just died. You're easily forgiven." With a nod, he said, "It's not your fault that my family bought you off." I winced, but then relaxed. How misguided his opinions were. Misguided and wrong. I kept my voice even. When someone signs a business contract to sell in the market, it makes them partners. It's called the free market, not the slave market. Outside the bar, someone splashed at the pool beyond the window. John's shoulders slumped, and my family takes advantage to control the free part. I tilted my head. He apologized for the entirely wrong things, but now wasn't the time to sound like a harpy. Now, that is true, but I don't blame you for that. No one forced my family into any contracts to make money. What offended me at the funeral parlor was how you acted as if you couldn't be bothered with someone who did business with your family. We were friends, John. Never think I'd betray anything you'd ever say or do. I didn't. Not really. His gaze remained full of judgment, but then I might be reading him wrong. I swallowed as he said, "I tend to jump to the worst conclusions when it comes to my family's business policies. I apologize. Would you like a drink?" "No, thanks. I want to know you're okay." "Why do you care?" "You're Vicky's brother." My chest tightened and I rubbed the back of my neck. Why not tell him the truth? Neither of us were children, and I'd never see him again once the funeral was over and he went back to wherever he was from. "I went to your football games because I had the biggest crush on you then." "A crush? You?" "Alice, I didn't know." His face softened and the outlines of his dimples puckered his cheeks. Sexiness was no reason to fall apart. I straightened the hem of my dress, wishing I'd worn something sexier, though he'd told me earlier that I filled out my dress just fine. "Now you do." "It was a long time ago." He appeared caught off guard by my declaration. I looked into his deep blue eyes and he took a step backwards. "Because of my family money?" "No, don't be rude again." My heartbeat was so rapid that I feared losing my ability to speak, but I fought through because I needed to finish what I'd started. "I held the back of my bar stool because you never treated me like a peasant that your sister brought home from the streets." His smile faltered as he studied me. I felt like an ice cube that had been out in the sun too long. For relief, I stepped into the shadows as he then said, "Alice, you went to school with us. Your family is far from the peasant class in any century. The oranges up north ensured that my family stayed millionaires as long as the farm stayed productive." I blinked. "Not everyone in your family agrees." He softened his voice. "Peter?" Guessed right the first time. His brother had said that my contract depended on getting John to the funeral. I coughed and then stared back at him. "Yeah." His shoulders relaxed as he stepped closer to me with a genuine smile on his face. "I'm glad I asked the concierge to bring you to me." Unsure how I became so lightheaded so fast, I hung onto my chair. The air around me smelled like cedar and pine trees and John. I hoped I'd get the thump of my heart under control before I lost my precious control. Is that what this was? I thought I was summoned. "Summoned? I can't command anything from you. You can go if you wish." The last thing I wanted was to leave his side, and then he offered his arm. "I hope you'll stay, though. I don't want to spend the night alone. I just spent the evening with people I no longer wish to know, and I could use your company." Heat rose to my cheekbones, and I'd have bet I was blushing. All my life, I'd dreamed John would be mine. To build a wall, I crossed my arms in front of my chest. "I'm not inviting you into my room, if that's the implication." "No." He smiled at me. His warm gaze sent my heart into a tizzy. I dropped my arms to my side as he said, "I was hoping you'd have dinner with me here, and maybe a drink. I have a suite on the 13th floor." A drink and dinner with my Prince Charming. I must be dreaming. Maybe I should throw caution to the wind for one night with John. I was an adult now, and my reactions to him sent my body into overdrive. The House of Morgan always controlled the deck of cards, but soon enough he'd be gone back to wherever he came. In the future, I'd still be here and end up married to someone who could tolerate farm life. This night might be all I'd ever get of John Morgan. I shrugged my shoulders. If you are afraid of bad luck or Al Capone's hauntings, you might want to change floors. Nope. John held out his hand. Will you hang out with me tonight? Hang out was far too tame for my thoughts. I brushed my fingers down his thin, long-sleeved shirt until I reached his hand. My flesh seemed electrified. If he touched my bare skin, I'd wrap my arms around him, wanting to see every part of his body. This neediness was so unlike me. I wanted to agree with anything he said when I usually questioned everything. Sure, let me go change. Meet you here in an hour. At least I sounded normal. Earlier I couldn't even do that. I leaned into him as he said, "Perfect, and thank you." I tilted my head. For what? His dimpled smile drew me into a dream as he said, "For forgiving me so fast." The wake seemed a long time ago now. In the House of Morgan, no one taught you to let things go. The no he gave when he shook his head didn't match the humorous gleam in his eyes. No, that wasn't one of the lessons. I turned to leave the bar, but peeked behind me. John watched me, and his muscular body, combined with those blue eyes and dazzling smile, triggered something deep inside me. This was my fantasy coming true, so I'd enjoy every moment until it was over. Well then, welcome to Alice's worldview tonight. You might regret this tomorrow. He winked at me. Somehow, I doubt it. With a spring in my step, I sashayed from the pool and picked up my room key and bag. John said hang out, but this was one night where I could pretend to be Cinderella. Alone in the elevator, I licked my lips and wondered what John's kiss would taste like. I bet it was tastier than the freshest strawberries from our fields.